Here we go on chapter 13. There's only two more after. You may have noticed we're skipping the last chapter to stay in sync with our semester. The chapter that's being skipped is not unimportant. In fact, I'll bet a lot of people look at it just out of curiosity. So this deals with emotions, stress, and health. Very topical these days. And Robert Sapolsky. This guy is larger than life. He's got some great lectures on neurobiology online, and he's got his beard is dramatic. And when I would see him at neuroscience, he'd have these Hawaiian shirts on. He's just larger than life and way bright and writes really well. And I guess I'll do this now. I've given you links to two of his books, one of which is most relevant to this vignette. Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers. Very well regarded book, very relevant to this chapter, as you'll see. And there are the zebras being so happy. And the acclaimed guide to stress-related diseases, and coping. Wow, third edition. That I did not know. Sapolsky spent a lot of time in Africa watching, largely baboons, but and thinking deep thoughts. He's quite the guy. And the other book I linked for you is Behave. Now, the university sort of reinforces faculty for getting to go together and talking about smart books. And I forget when this was new, maybe 2 years ago, 3 years ago. I read it over the oh, there he is, looking like himself. Yes, that's the way I remember him. Yeah, and very, 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 very bright. So Behave, the biology of humans at our best and worst. I highly recommended this. The faculty seemed to enjoy it. We discussed this, I think, for an entire year. And it has lots of relevance. Generated lots of really good discussions. Not overly relevant to this chapter, I must admit. But this may be his. I purchased this in 2018, September. I don't know when we did the reader or the discussion group, but the university would buy us snacks. We had lots of pizza and salad. Some people eat salad. I can't relate. So there's an opening vignette, and we'll come back to it. And the good news about this vignette is it doesn't end as tragically as some vignettes. Whoa. One thing we are not packing are huge canines, and a number of our primate relatives do, and they're scary. I may have mentioned that there was there was a research company in Dunmore and they weren't working with baboons, but they were the leader of the pack had worked with rhesus monkeys, which I believe have come up in the chapter, and they're pretty vicious. And one of them chomped down on his forearm, and everyone screamed at him, "Don't move, don't move!" And he had to stand still until the monkey got bored and let him go, because if he had pulled his arm out of the monkey's grasp, those canines would have ripped through tendons and nerves. It's a very big deal that our species is not packing uh, huge canines, an important reflection of our evolutionary history. So, emotions, mental state, autonomic nervous system, which we've seen before, and there's sympathetic and parasympathetic, which we've seen before, and then theories of emotion, folk psychology, what people on the street might say, and information, informal observations suggest that emotions cause the body to react. And then there's the James Lang theory, argue that the body response evokes the emotional experience. So, compare and contrast those two timelines. And then the guy I'm not related to, Walter Buchanan, Cannon-Bard theory, is different. The James Lang theory comes out better in these comparisons. And there's a discussion of it and a brief discussion of Cannon-Bard because I don't talk about it very much anymore. Schachter and Singer in 62 did some very important research, and here they are injecting people with epinephrine and then exposing them to social cues. And if you get the epinephrine, not knowing what it is, and you get a playful Confederate, you get kind of happy. And if you get the angry Confederate, you get kind of angry. That's important stuff. And related research, which relates to attraction, is the bridge study, where people cross a bridge, probably in a park, a national park possibly, and there's two bridges. One is low, and one is high and scary. And at the end of each bridge, a female, they only studied males, a female investigator asked people to fill out a survey, which was not what the study was about. But the investigator told the people who had just crossed the bridges, I can't tell you what the study is about now because you might talk to somebody who will also be in it. So after the study closes, here's my card. If you want me to discuss the study with you, just call that number and I will discuss the study. And the variable was the bridge. And if you just crossed a very high bridge and you had autonomic arousal, sympathetic arousal without getting an injection, the guys were more likely to contact the female than the low bridge. And stories about the Roman Colosseum, it was recommended back in those days, if you wanted a woman to fall in love with you, take them to the Colosseum, possibly to see slaughter. And nowadays, you might get taken to a scary movie or an amusement park with roller coasters where you get an autonomic arousal associated with being with someone, and you may misattribute what you're feeling and more likely to be attracted to the person you're with. So there's the Schachter's two-factor theory, pretty well regarded, I would say. And then how many emotions are there? You might look at that. You know, levels of emotion, low, medium, high, and then a wheel of potential emotions. Then the wiring of the face, facial muscles, and neural control. And Darwin was very interested in emotional expression in humans and other species. And there's an illustration from Darwin's own book on black crested macaques. It's hard to relate to that as being a pleasant smile. There's a Tibetan macaque baring its teeth, grinning, submission. That's still kind of scary. And then there's a female chimp screaming at another female. I find all of those pretty threatening. Yawning. I wanted to do research on this because I'm interested in politics and personality variables related to political orientation. So that's a nice discussion. And, yawning is a social type behavior. And what interested me was that autistic people were less likely to engage in social yawning. And that intrigued me about possibly one political orientation. And then there are different faces. That the woman in the happiness picture, every time I see it, I feel like I know her. And some emojis, if that amuses you. And then there's research on whether recognizing emotions is pretty universal, which Darwin wanted it to be. Among literate societies, it seems to be pretty okay, but in isolated, non-literate societies, we're not very good at surprise and disgust. They are not very good at surprise and disgust. And cultures can affect emotional displays. I think this is the third edition, the fourth, third, that of books written by Breedlove, the other ones being behavioral neuroscience, and he changes presidents in each. Aristotle talked about catharsis, which Freud got pretty excited by, but we're not very excited by Freud. Facial feedback, that was popular. The research on the next page, I'll tell you, is not. There's some question about whether it replicates, but the facial feedback hypothesis, sensory feedback from our face affects emotional experience. This research with how you hold the pencil, apparently some people have had trouble replicating that. It'll be interesting to see whether that shows up in the next edition. And then paralyzing muscles of the face with Botox. That apparently can blunt the perception of emotion. And forcing yourself to act happier may actually help. Distracting yourself can help. Modern research seems to back up James Bushman. He taught graduate a graduate of the University of Scranton, and I think she was involved in some of the research that he was involved in terms of violent games. Um, and some people recommend that you should, if you're feeling aggressive, you should engage in something aggressive to let the aggression out. The data don't really support that. Doing something to distract yourself, that may help. Pursuit of happiness. There are national, international surveys of happiness. We don't do very badly. I think we're 13th, but Scandinavian countries, those populations are happy. Um, Activity, Aristotle, being active, yes, and exercise. There's almost nothing that exercise doesn't help. And there's even an experiment later in this chapter with exercise and being associated with your hippocampus plumping up, which is a good thing. And the data on money are interesting. It's a diminishing return as the amount of money goes up, but with annual income in the mid 70s, you pretty much max out. Although life satisfaction, seems to keep going up if you make obscene amounts of money. And the lottery data, it's been found multiple times that people who suddenly have money dumped on them, it often does not end up well. Social relationships, strong social relationships are more likely to stay alive. Longevity is increased, healthfulness is increased, social support comes up over and over in this chapter as being something that helps. One researcher noticed that if your friends' friends become happy, that has a bigger impact on you being happy than giving you $5,000. And religion, which is almost always a social activity, that can be related to increases in happiness. But it depends on what culture you're in. Similar studies done in countries such as the Netherlands and Denmark, where fewer people are religious, there's no correlation between happiness and religiosity. And those are countries that tend to be happier than we are. So it's complicated. Age. The best predictor of whether older people are happy is how many strong personal relationships they have. I think that's why I like to teach. I need you guys. If I don't feel very well in the morning back when I was teaching live, if you just put me in a classroom and let me teach one class, and it's like a drug. It just makes me feel so much better. Not that, we develop close personal relationships, but I think teaching can have a very supportive effect for health and mental well-being. Okay, now this research I'm very interested in, which is related to fear, which I've done research on. And Ledoux, he has a lab in New York City that I've always wanted to have a student go work in, but that never happened. I saw him give a talk at the Society for Neuroscience meeting, and it was about the amygdala. And I always used to say amygdala, the amygdala. But after watching his talk, I'm not comfortable with that. I now like to say amygdaloid complex. Kluver-Bucy monkeys, they were given amygdaloid complex lesions, and they had very big changes in behavior, including aggression, which I guess I can't go over, but it's interesting. So now we have this graph of a scorpion. And okay, so on the left, you see the scorpion, you see sensory information. Of course, it would be partially crossed going into your thalamus. And the thalamus can relate that information either directly to the amygdaloid complex or to somatosensory cortex, and it's simplified on the right. So the stimulus sensory organ, thalamus, thalamus can directly talk to the amygdaloid complex, and that diagram has been very simplified. So I guess just know the one central nucleus, or the thalamus can relate information to the sensory cortex and hippocampus, which then can send information to the amygdaloid. And there's a discussion here of high road and low road. Ledoux, by the way, has written books for popular consumption. I think I read one of them. He's a good writer, and he thinks big, and he does a lot of really good research. And what about those terms, high road and low road? Well, I've given you, well, first of all, here's Ledoux, the dude. He has a musical group that plays in bars in New York City. And this is one of his songs on fear, fearing by the amygdaloids. And I don't hear that. Do you hear that? Oh.
While I was fearing you came,
Let's start again.
with less of the fear.
That looks quite a bit like our part of the country. So he probably went to the Poconos for this. Nice boots, nice soul patch.
While I was fearing you came,
That's one of his graduate students,
less of
I
the fear.
think.
Because fearing you so long had almost made a dear. There is a fitting dismay, an appropriate despair. 'Tis harder now that fear is due than knowing it is here. Awaiting is the word.
I bought that album. I'm an owner. And High Road, Low Road. So this is a song that I found undergraduates don't know anymore. So now you will.
On March 16, 2021, 6 women were among the victims of a horrific shooting in Georgia. They were grandmothered,
By your banks and by yon bonny braes, where the sun shines bright on Loch Lomond, where me and my true love will never meet again, on the bonny, bonny banks of Loch Lomond.
Here it comes.
Oh, you take the high road and I'll take the low road, and I'll be in Scotland afar ye. But me and my true love will never meet again.
You ever get a tingle when you listen to music? I do. So you take the high road and I'll take the low road and I'll get to Scotland for you. So there's the low road, directly from the thalamus to the amygdaloid complex. And the high road goes to other places where you can think about it a bit, and then it goes to the amygdaloid complex, which leads to emotional behavior, autonomic responses, hormonal responses, and the low road is faster, and it's not very intellectual. And if you're armed with a gun before the high road can kick in, the low road may end up with you shooting someone. This is difficult. In high emotional situations, there's often not a lot of thinking going on. And then there's this woman, SM. Both amygdaloid complexes have been destroyed, and these are data from her emotional responses to different clips, and she's not very emotional. PTSD. The first student who worked in my lab when I came to Scranton in 80 or 81, he was a legit Vietnam vet who had PTSD. I had never seen anything like it. If there was thunder, he was just destroyed, and it was completely foreign to me. I hope everything ended up okay for him. And yes, so there's PTSD, different kinds of combat, and yeah, we're going to have like a generation of people with PTSD because of never-ending war against terrorism. Going back to before most of you were born, probably. And the environment is important. Genes are important. It's complicated, as many things are. But boy, it's important. It can be very crippling. Hippocampus size may be important, and it may be important prior to the traumatic event. And these are great pictures. So these are MRIs that have been colorized. And anterior cingulate, I think we've seen before. Amygdala, we've seen before. Orbitofrontal region, Phineas Gage, we've seen before. Because we talked about the anterior cingulate, you must have assumed there was a posterior cingulate. But I don't think we've talked about the insula. And the insula is pretty darn big. And it's buried in the fissure between the temporal and parietal lobes. and it's very important for emotion. And there's love, which is an emotion. They now have MRI scans where people can go in and do more than look at pictures of their beloved ones. They can engage in sexual behavior. There's insular cortex again, with love, emotional syndrome. Left and right sides of the brain differ. Damage to the right side of the brain. The people seem to be unusually happy, which is pretty interesting. There were stories about home nursing people who, when they were deciding whether to take care of people who had strokes, they really wanted people with strokes on the right side, who had more positive emotional tone. The left often can be pretty cranky, and it's not because of the aphasia. And this is well replicated research where you take the photograph of a face expressing emotion, split it down the middle, and put either the two left sides together, the two right sides together, and then you have the original in the middle. And most people judge the left side of the face as being more emotional. Of course, the left side of your face is controlled by your right hemisphere, which is thought to be more emotional. So if you're trying to read someone's emotional state, like playing poker with them or something, you should be looking at the left side of their face. Stress and health. And, Sapolsky is going to come up here again. You can't have no stress. What seems to be very bad for health is chronic stress. So there's acute stress, and that animal will either escape and then can calm down, or will be dead, and the stress won't make much difference. We have chronic stress. Lie detectors. They detect stress, not lies. So, some people make their living giving these, and some police departments are in love with them. The data are not good. And the next page has more data and some scans that may be related to whether or not you're lying. But the likelihood we're going to scan people in lieu of polygraphs is not likely. General adaptation syndrome is well-respected. Alarm reaction, adaptation stage, exhaustion stage, and there's a graph on the next page. Maybe not. Okay, but it's a bit, emotions go up, they plateau, they go down. It's an inverted U. So here we are jumping out of a plane, which I can't relate to. Soldiers training for parachute jumps display an array of behavior, hormonal, or an array of hormonal changes. So you have cortisol, classic stress, testosterone, epinephrine, norepinephrine, and one is jump day. Testosterone gets pretty nailed, but you tend to bounce back if you don't die. Epinephrine bounces up but stabilizes. Norepinephrine has a similar pattern. Adrenal glands, I've done research on them in studying stress-induced analgesia. And they're important, and they're part of the interplay between the body and the brain. And normal stress, you can relate better to the right one. Levels of epinephrine and norepinephrine in graduate students leading up to an exam, they go up and they go down. Hold on, I think it's going to come up later in the chapter, right? So I won't tell it now. There's news. Not everyone is the same. And there's some very interesting research with rats and rat pups. And we've seen mothers licking their young, and that can help with adaptation to stress, making them more resilient, which is a popular term these days. Stress immunization, the concept that mild stress early in life makes an individual better to handle stress later on, and there's an important qualifier. Research indicates early stress is only beneficial if the individual is comforted afterwards, which the moms do. And adverse child experiences. And I love it that the author says these data, because data is a plural noun. It's now popular to say the data, but it's these data. These data argue against the simple-minded idea that early stress immunizes us, because the more bad things that have happened in the past, the more likelihood that bad things may happen in your future, like suicide. Those are important data. Suicide is an important thing to think about. And here we come with control, which should make you think about the earlier research relating to learned helplessness. This is a little bit different, but Brady did research with rhesus monkeys, but he did bad science. He did not do an experiment. He didn't assign the animals to groups. The animals assigned themselves to groups, and that really can mess up the conclusions of the research. More recent research on these topics are done better than Brady did. There's a discussion of that. And being an executive rat versus the yoked rat, and we've discussed yoking in the past, the executive gets fewer ulcers. And being warned that something's going to happen reduces ulcers, even in the yoked animals. So control and predictability are important. There's Helicobacter pylori, most common cause of stomach ulcers. Nobel Prize, if I'm not mistaken, for discovering that. I always wanted to have that. But when I asked my physician to test me for it back in the early days, they had to go into your stomach and snip some of it out. Now it's easier to test without being so invasive. Antibiotics can have a dramatic effect there. Bismuth also can kill those bacteria. So often they combine bismuth treatment with antibiotics. The bismuth gets the bacteria that are hanging out in the stomach, but not in good contact with your blood supply. And then the antibiotic kills what's in touch with your blood supply. That was very important research. Health psychology, social readjustment rating scale. Take a look at that. Death of spouse or child, divorce. Pretty predictable list. And there's an important paragraph at the bottom there. Remember, correlation does not prove causation. Semicolon, what a sentence. A correlation between stress and illness does not prove that the stressful event causes illness. And then there's a discussion of how that might be true. And there's college student stress scale. For a year on that, 98. And then, what kind of illnesses? There are many. It's rough on your body. Heart attacks, cardiovascular problems such as heart disease and hypertension, commonly associated with stress. People who think their lives are stressful are more likely to have heart attacks. British civil servants, people in the lowest pay grades, more likely to have heart disease. It's stressful. When I was just about leaving UCLA, this area has come to be known as psychoneuroimmunology, was pretty much getting started. It's a very robust field now, and there's interplays between the nervous system, the immune system, the endocrine system. It's complicated. Cytokines, white blood cells, antibodies. These have been in the news because of COVID, but they're also relevant to stressors. And the brain monitors the immune system. The immune system can affect the brain. It's a two-way street. Feeling sick, take a break, relax, heal. Your body is sort of forcing you to do that. With the COVID vaccinations, many people found like the day after the vaccination, when their immune systems were ramped up by the vaccination, they felt pretty lousy and spent the day in bed. That's what happens. That's what's supposed to happen. So there's a nice graphic. External stressful event, suppressed immune system, increased risk of illness, stress and suffering dealing with illness, more suppressed immune system. It can become a vicious cycle. And that heading, we are simply not adapted to handle prolonged stress. And there's Sapolsky again. And acute stress, we're good at that. But chronic stress, not so normal, and can have definite negative health consequences. Students' stressful exam periods usually cause a decline in the number of immune cells and cytokines. um, perception of stress. Um, I love this story. One experiment considered the effects of university exams on wound healing. They made wounds in the roof of the mouth of the dentists to be. One was during the summer vacation, the other was 3 days before the major exam. Not one student healed as rapidly during the exam period when healing took 40% longer on average. Stress. Stress makes you less able to deal with the slings and arrow of being injured. So there's a table, principal components of the stress response, common negative consequences. And we'll just look at the negative consequences: impaired disease resistance, fatigue, muscle wasting, diabetes, hypertension, ulcers, psychogenic dwarfism, loss of libido, apathy, neural degeneration during aging. Nothing good, I'll tell you. And there's a brief discussion of type A and B personalities. This is still pretty much supported, but there are conflicting data. And later we'll see that one of the big 5 components of personality is neuroticism. And that can be related to negative health consequences. The type A susceptibility to heart disease may be related to neuroticism. How do you deal? You can't go online and not find someone trying to market something to you to deal with chronic stress. So there's a discussion of various approaches here. Relaxation training. He seems to like that a bit. Biofeedback was big when I was in grad school. Meditation, that would some southern state made it illegal to teach students in classes. I think so. And there's lots of different kinds of meditation, and the positive outcome here is a little less clear. If it relaxes you, that almost certainly will have some positive effect. And then there's this mindfulness is very big, very well researched, in the news all the time. Therapists are encouraging mindfulness. Mindfulness-based stress reduction pairs relaxation with attention on the present moment. So there's the from UMass Med School, mindfulness-based stress reduction. Pairs relaxation with efforts to focus attention on the current moment. That's pretty well thought of. And the Mayo Clinic, which I respect the heck out of, things you can do here to stress relief, and look at what's number one. Get active. Exercise is good for like everything. Meditation, laugh, connect, assert yourself, do yoga. Sleep is very important. That can become a vicious cycle too. If you're not sleeping well, that can definitely be associated with increased stress levels. And healthy living. Uh, Maintaining our physical health is one of the best ways to reduce the mental toll of stress. Alcohol. He has good things to say about not much alcohol, like 2 drinks a day, but it's easy for 2 drinks a day to turn into more drinks a day, and more is worse here. But moderate drinking is correlated with some good outcomes in terms of health. Alcoholism, definitely bad. Pregnant women, driving, all bad. Drugs, some of the other things people do to cope with stress are clearly counterproductive. Uh, Anti-anxiety drugs, probably not such a good idea. The smoking, bad. Needle in the arm. But nicotine is nothing to be trifled with. One of the things I would notice when I'd go back and forth to UCLA in the summer for about the first decade I taught here is UCLA campus, virtually no smoking. You come back to Scranton and, oh, geez, so much smoking. It's reduced. It's being reduced now, but it bothers me. I've lost so many relatives to smoking, and the need to keep spending funds on cigarettes adds to stress. And I used to go into the Turkey Hill on Mulberry, and parents who clearly didn't have a lot of money buying cigarettes with kids in tow and not being able to get the kids extra stuff. Very disheartening. You probably don't know about the Marlboro Man, but let's see if I can come up with a quick link here. I don't know if I can spell Marlboro. Marlboro Man. So this is a very famous ad campaign. Rugged outdoorsman, smoking, living life like a real man should do. And then you die. I was protected from smoking because I'm a vomiter. The first time I seriously tried cigarettes, it was ugly, and that probably saved me. And here's a little tragic story from Mark Breedlove. I watched my mother slowly die of another consequence of smoking, and it makes relatively rapid death from cancer look good by comparison. Chronic obstructive pulmonary disorder, COPD. I see ads for this. You don't want it. Slow torture, and then you die. And then we're talking again about exercise, diet, and sleep as dealing with stress. The most effective form of exercise is whatever you enjoy, because you'll do it. How to stop smoking. There's a list of things that don't work. There used to be ads in the Scranton paper for some hypnotherapist who would roll into town and for 2 days hypnotize people and cure smoking. and then leave town. Not good, not good science there. Cold turkey versus reduction. One of my former students, she tried everything. Patches, drugs. My mother tried gum, patches, didn't work. Bupropion increases the odds of quitting. It's an antidepressant, and sometimes it's used not because you're depressed, but because they want you to just want to stop smoking. Exercise programs out, which is one of the few negatives about exercise. Acupuncture, substitutes, and hypnosis, not very useful. Having social support is important, and the text discusses that. Of course, as part of a class when I was an undergraduate, I had to go to an AA meeting. Whoa, so much smoking. You can barely breathe. And social support, these effects are larger than any pharmacological intervention. If a spouse quits smoking, the other spouse also quits 67% of the time. Friends or relatives, social support. And there's the START program. Set a date, tell people, anticipate and plan for challenges, remove all products and paraphernalia from the home, and talk to a physician about getting help. Very difficult to stop smoking. Don't start. Cigarette companies know that if they can't get young people to start smoking, when people hit your age or older, when your frontal lobes kick in, you're not going to start unless you're in World War II, when they package Lucky Strikes in with your food packages from home. Sleep is good, not only for physical health, boosts the immune system. Those who don't get enough sleep are more susceptible to depression and suicide. There's good news. Friends and family, social support, we've already mentioned. Stress buffering, hypothesis, social support makes most of life better. And remember, you're more likely to live longer if you have social support. Pets can do that too. The problem with pets is they don't last a long time. And one of my friends has done research on how much loss you feel when a pet dies. It's very real. It's very, very, very real. But while they're there are good support systems. And there's different kinds of suppressions and genetics and immunes and hormones in the nervous system, social support, health consequences. And now we're back to the baboons. And I remember when I was reading his book about this story, the aggressive male baboons, they just made life hell for everybody. But then people were throwing out contaminated meat, and it was infected with tuberculosis. And the alpha type males, the top males, were the only ones who were allowed to access this garbage dump where the infected meat was, and they got tuberculosis and they died. And the whole social structure of the troop changed, and it lasted. And there's stories here about males coming in from other troops and trying to engage in aggressive behaviors, and the troop would have none of it, and they just chilled out. Even 20 years later, the forest troop remains relatively peaceful for baboons. New males try to be aggressive, and they just won't have anything to do with them. I'm freaked out by this. The Toxoplasmosis gondii. And there's a telling picture there. It needs to get inside cats to complete its life cycle. And it apparently changes the brains of mice, and they lose their natural fear of the smell of cat urine and cats. And the percentage of people who were infected with this, high in France and Brazil, if I'm not mistaken. The United States is, medium. There's some evidence it's associated with the development of schizophrenia, and apparently affecting driving behavior. People who've been infected with toxoplasmosis more likely to be in traffic accidents. And let me say temperament. There's some evidence that it's associated with, in females, behaving sort of like a cat lady, being obsessed with your cats and pets, and males become, in contrast, relatively aloof and suspicious. I don't want it to be part of my life. I certainly don't want schizophrenia. So, not a fan. And I think that's the end of this chapter. Yes. So, we are done with chapter 13, and there's only 2 more lectures to go. Again, 16 on clinical psychology. You'll have to look at yourself just for fun. The book has dealt with many clinically related issues as it's gone through the different chapters. For example, this one, in terms of stress and health. So he's trying to touch those bases, and I don't feel too bad about sticking with just the 15. This is a challenging course. Lots to learn. Thank you for dropping by. We're nearing the end.